Alright, so we have a Sega Game Gear that the seller that I bought this from, I bought it off of eBay, I think, said when you power it on, it turns right back off. And that is correct. It definitely turns on and then turns right back off. So it's definitely not working. I'm hoping it's something more than the capacitors just being bad, but we'll see. So I will disassemble this and we will pick it up once I've disassembled. So as you can see, this is a really clean board. I mean, I don't see any type of corrosion or anything. Not from the naked eye anyways. I do see something right here there that may be some capacitor leakage. Yeah, I've never worked on this type of board before. This is a VA4 board. If I'm not mistaken, I don't even think you can get a new screen for a VA4 board. I know Retro 6 is supposed to be making ones. Let's plug it back in and see if I put some batteries in it, if it will turn on now. So I hope the screen's not bad on this, because if the screen's bad on this, I don't know. It's just junk, I guess. I don't think the screen is bad though. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I don't know. Alright, let's put the batteries back in. Yep, same thing. Oh yeah, I smell it. Yeah, I smell fish. So y'all know what that means. If you smell fish when you open up a Sega Game Gear, that definitely means that you need to replace your capacitors. So this is going to be a capacitor replacing exercise. So once I have everything removed, I will be back. Alright, so I've got my capacitor kit. So I think I'm going to go ahead and replace the capacitors on the power board and the audio board. That way I can go ahead and get those knocked out and installed back into the case. And then I'll give it a test and see what happens after that. Ultimately, I'm going to have to replace all of the capacitors, but because you don't know which ones are good or bad. There's no point taking them off and, trying to figure it out or whatever. Alright, so let's see if we can get this done. Alright, so this is 1,000 microfarad. And I'm assuming that's the big one. So let's start with that one first. Oh Lord. Hope I didn't pull the pad off. This ain't good. The pad's gone. How am I going to do this? But the pad is on the other side. Well, we're going to have to try that. I mean, it seems like it's secure. It's not moving. So, give that a try. I really hope that, I mean, that thing's solid, dude. Anyhow, so I'm going to call that done. And the next thing is this. And I'm not sure I know the best way to get these off. I'm afraid to use hot air to get those off, because if I use hot air, then I'm going to inevitably melt something. So I wonder if I got like a piece of metal. So that first one came off pretty easy. So let's see if we can't get the second one off. See, this is a way easier way to get those off, because the first two times I pried and pulled and all of that stuff. So that's a way easier method of getting those off. All right, so I think the best way to approach this is to put some flux on our pads. So I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need 5 capacitors. So let's dump those out. So again, looking at the schematic for this, or looking at the capacitors that were on here, these two were 47 microfarads, and these were 100 microfarads. So I'm going to replace them with all 100 microfarad capacitors. So I think the first step is going to be to put some solder on the tip of my soldering iron, like so. And then I'm going to grab a capacitor. You want to make sure that you're able to set it on there flat. So just put it right in place like that. Did I get this one? I think so. So I'll go ahead and put this portion of the game gear back together. Then we'll cut it on. I'll clean this up, put it back together. We'll cut it on and see if there are any changes. I don't expect there to be any, but you never know. So, all right, it's back together. Let's cut it on. I'll put a game in. We'll see what it does. Same thing. So I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that those other capacitors are also bad. All right, so I went ahead and removed this board. I was going to try it without it, but you know, it's like 7 screws, so might as well pull it out just to be safe. So I kind of did a little research. So the capacitors that we're going to have to change are these two here, all the ones that look like this right here, these two capacitors located right here, and these two located over here. So yeah, so those are the ones that we're going to have to pull out. And I think that the only ones that I really can't use hot air for are these two right here. Well, this one I could, but this one I'm going to have to desolder from the other side of the board. And when I pulled it out, I noticed that there's some liquid underneath that, the rubber pad. So let's go ahead and figure out this capacitor. is located right here. Go ahead and remove that. Flip it back over. Put a little flux down, maybe add some solder to these pads here, like so. I wonder if the best thing to do would be to do this one at a time, or pull them all off and then replace them. See this one right here, I can't tell what that is. Those are both 22 microfarad capacitors. So they're both going to have to be replaced with 100 microfarad capacitors. Alright, I think that is all of the capacitors. We will put it back together and give it a test, so I'll be back once I have it together. Alright, I've got it back together, got a game in. Let's power it on. Get nothing. Nope, same thing. Red light comes on, then goes out. Well, at least now we know that the capacitors were not causing that issue. So I will take it back apart and we will continue to troubleshoot. Alright, so I've been digging around in the power board because I'm not even getting a flashing red light now. But essentially the way this works is this is your voltage regulator. And so when you apply power, to it and you check the voltage on pin 7 there, if you don't know how to read a chip, this is signifying pin 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Pin 7 is in fact your output for this chip for the 5-volt rail. And so I'm getting 9 volts there, and then that feeds a transistor. I'm assuming I can't really find it feeds Q3, but I can't really find Q3, and it's hard to trace this board just because it's so small and there's so many components. But essentially, when you check this, you know, to get your red light to come on, you have to have 5 volts. You have to have 5 volts on your output, and these pins right here go to the actual motherboard of the Game Gear, and these 2 pins right here, you're supposed to have 5 volts. And when you check those, I'm not getting any voltage at all. And then when I checked, and according to the schematic that you can find on Retro 6, this capacitor C13 is your 5-volt line. This is the capacitor that's located right here. It's to your 5-volt line. So in any event, I'm not getting a direct. It says it's a direct short, but I'm definitely not getting a direct short between there. But I was getting voltage on. I was getting like 8 volts, 7 volts, somewhere around in there on that capacitor, but I was not getting 5 volts on my output. So I took the capacitor off, and then when you actually look at this under the microscope, and I'm glad I took those capacitors off because I was trying to find the traces. If you notice, there's nothing here. It's gone. So if my 5 volts, my capacitor is charging up, and that 5 volts is supposed to be felt on this path right here, it most likely was not being felt on that path. So then when you look at the one next to it, look at this one, same thing. The corrosion from the capacitors has eaten away at the actual pads. So I have to figure out a way to fix that. So I don't know how I'm going to fix that, but I'm going to have to figure out a way, or order another power board. But I don't want to do that. I want to try to fix it. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I'm at. The problem, because and another thing, this pad right here is for your 34 volt rail, and I'm not getting 34 volts. 34 volts can be felt on this pin right here. So on this pin, you're supposed to have 34 volts. On this pin, you're supposed to have your battery voltage. This pin is your VREF, which the VREF goes to into your processor so that it can compare your battery voltage and the VREF voltage, and that has to be significantly lower than your battery voltage felt, and if it's not, then that means it's a low battery indication. But anyhow, and then you're supposed to have your 5 volts on these last 2 pins, and these pins here are ground. So the problem is definitely, so far, this problem is definitely with the power board, and I need to figure out how to fix it. So that is where I'm at. And that I'll pick back up when I have something to tell. So I think what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to take and wrap wire around the suspect leg of the capacitor and then shove it in the hole, and then the other piece of the wire I'm going to solder to where I've scratched off the solder mask, like right in here. Oh Lord, I can't see. I'm gonna, right in here I'll put solder, and then right in here I'll put solder. That way I can at least make sure. Or, you know, I suppose I could just run a wire. I mean, I could run a piece of wire to the back side to connect that, you know. I could do that as well. But I'd rather it be neat, you know. And I'm going to do the same thing on this one. And then I'll fix the back side. And I'm going to have to end up taking this one off as well, because this one is also, a pad is missing. So I think this one's good though. I actually think this one fixed itself when I soldered it on there. So yeah. So that is what I'm going to try to do. Not sure it's going to be successful. So that is the positive leg of the capacitor. I'm going to do the smaller one first. You know what, I just had an epiphany. Maybe I should run the wire through the hole. I'm gonna need some bigger wire, I think. So if I take this piece of wire and I run it through that hole, and then I take my capacitor. Where is my small capacitor? There it is. If I take my capacitor and also run it through the hole, like this, pull this out a little bit, and then take some flux put a little solder on my tip, and then fix it in there like so. And this other one, I can go ahead and put a dot of solder. You know what, dude? This has got to come off. My little makeshift. I said like 3 videos ago that I was going to get some alligator clamps. Still haven't done it. So then this, will go on here like so. I don't know if it's missing its pad or not. See, no, that's ground, and it's missing its pad, so I'm gonna have to solder a wire from there to ground. It's amazing what corrosion will do. Alright, so that wire is firmly attached. So now, what we're going to do is try to put some solder on like that, right? I've got to figure out how to break this off, 'cause I can't get the wire cutters in there to. Looks like it's alright on the microscope though. So now I need to find a ground. Find a ground that I can solder that other leg to. I suppose I could run it. So I will attach this wire to this ground when I am finished with this other capacitor. So now it's time for the big one. All right. Let's get the excess solder. Alright, so I think I'm going to do use the same technique for this just to make sure. All right. That's done. One more to go. I'll go ahead and bend this around. Put a little flux. Hey, it's stuck, it looks like. Alright. Now if I cut this on and my power supply beeps, that means I have a short. Alright, I do not have a short. Okay, good. So let's check to see if we have 34 volts. We have 3.5 volts. Do I have my, oh my gosh, dude. Do I have my 5 volts? I have indeed, I do have exactly 5 volts. Boom, look at that. All right, well, I'm gonna put it back together and give it a quick test. So I have this out. This goes in here like so. All right. I'm going to cut on my power supply and hopefully nothing blows up. No current draw so far. And we got red light boot. Okay, that's amazing. Alright, awesome, awesome, awesome. I'll put it back together and then we will test it with a game in and see what we get. So I shall return. Alright, so I put it back together and it was still doing the same thing. I was back to the point to where it would cut on and it would cut off. So I took it back out of the case and decided to, I couldn't tell if the LCD or if the backlight tube was illuminating. I couldn't tell if I was getting voltage there. So I cut the lights out and turned it on. And I noticed that I kept getting an arc right here. It started, and you can probably see if I zoom in a little bit, it's kind of charred right in there. So originally when I took this apart, there was liquid all underneath this, or all over these contacts right here. So I'm assuming some of that liquid had made its way to there. So I went ahead and cut on, or got some IPA and cleaned it up pretty well. And now let's cut it on. I still don't have any volume. I do have video now, but the screen's shot. I don't know if that speaker's bad or if the sound. I don't have sound, and I don't have, although this looks kind of weird down here. All right, I'm gonna play around with this stuff down here and see if there's anything not quite right. And then I'll be back when I've looked at it. It looks like it got damaged somehow. Uh-oh. I think I just did something bad. I mean, there might be a way to fix this. I'm not sure. There might be a way to fix this. Alright, so I think it's a no-go on this screen right here. I tried to touch up the solder connections down here at the bottom and nothing. So I decided I was going to go ahead and troubleshoot the sound. You know, because if we can get the sound to work, then when they do finally release a VA4 LCD, we can go ahead and install that and have a working console. So I decided I was going to go ahead and take and try this with some headphones. And when I do that, I do get sound. But if I increase the volume, it's like it overdrives the amplifier or something. So I think that I need to just maybe inspect the board or something to see if maybe I installed a capacitor wrong. So, but as you can tell, sound works. Well, and that means to me is that everything on the motherboard, so my processor is producing sound, and then that sound is being felt out of my sound port into my sound card. So that tells me then that the problem must be on this right here. But then why is it not coming out the speaker? So if I take my speaker, and let's ohm the speaker. So let's put our multimeter right here so we can see. If I take and measure on my speaker, I get 6.9 ohms. So this is probably an 8 ohm speaker, so that's should be okay, right? So now I don't know if this is also like a Game Boy to where when you plug in the headphones it interrupts. Maybe I should put some alcohol into the potentiometer for the volume, and then maybe I should also put some alcohol into that headphone jack. But let's just real quick, let's plug in our speaker. Let's plug in our speaker and see, maybe now that I plugged headphones in, maybe it squared something away within the sound board here. Dude, I don't know how to plug this in. How do you plug this in? It's just, alright, so there we go. So let's yeah, so we're still not getting sound. We should be getting sound, and we are not. But I'm pretty sure the speaker's good. Alright, so let's put some alcohol into our port. Let's put some alcohol into our potentiometer. Let's rub that around. Let's take this and plug it in, plug it out. Maybe it got some corrosion in there or something. Alright, let's cut it on. Yeah, we're not, man, you know I really need an oscilloscope. Alright, so we're not getting any, that didn't seem to fix the issue. So let's take this off. Let's unplug, plug that, set it to the side. Let's bring in the microscope. Alright, so it looks like our tracks, we're going to inspect our traces. So it looks like we have a trace that runs from here to somewhere underneath this. So it looks like, let's figure out if we can see. First, let's make sure all our joints are good. I mean, they look hideously ugly, but as long as they're connected, we're good to go. Alright, so we know we have a trace that runs here to here. I don't know which one of these Yeah, this is gross, man. What is this? Is this metal or is that plastic? Oh, man. Yeah, that's metal. So I am going to say then that there's something in here. I mean, I could be wrong, as I often am, but that's gross, man. Yeah, I think okay, so based on what we've already kind of discovered, right? So we had corrosion so bad on the power board that it ate away the pads. So when I desoldered them to put in new capacitors, the pads just came right off, right? So that's one issue. Another issue we had was obviously all of the capacitors were bad. So we know that that was an issue. Capacitors had to be replaced, and we did that. Then we found that liquid damage had caused a short between the ground leg of T1 and I guess either the input or output of T1. I'm not sure which. So I was shorting the system out so it would not boot, and it was causing fire. Not necessarily fire, but you know what I'm saying. So I don't know what damage that did. That may have because T1 is for the backlight tube, that fluorescent tube that illuminates the display. That's what T1 is used for. I'm assuming to step up the voltage to some outrageous amount to apply power to that tube. I don't know if that had some kind of damage, and I don't know if liquid got into this right here. Yeah, and this isn't like a. I don't know. I don't know how this works, right? So if I plug in, let's see if we can see any visual indication of what happens when you plug in something. So we'll look here. I see it. Oh, wait, there's something right in here. If you notice, right in here, I see something moving. Can you even disassemble this thing? So we know that the amplifier is working. We know that K2209, I'm assuming that's the amplifier. We know that that's working because we get output on our headphone jack. Because this has two pads. It has one. Okay, so check this out. All right, so this other pin comes out here, comes down to here, comes to this capacitor, and then through that capacitor. And I'm guessing that's to take the DC off of the line, and it arrives somewhere under this chip. What does this chip right here do? I think I'm gonna have to look at the schematic. All right, so this is the schematic of the audio board for the Game Gear. So we know that we have our 5 volts here, and our 5 volts comes in, and it's felt to pin 2 of our audio amplifier. This is one of the capacitors that we changed. This is one of the capacitors that we changed. This is a capacitor, and then these two right here. Those are the 5 capacitors that we put 100 microfarad capacitors in. So audio, so the other thing, ground, is felt here. So I verified that I have 5 volts. I know I'm getting 5 volts because I'm getting audio on the output of my headphone jack. I did in fact verify that I had a good ground to pin 2. Audio comes in on pins 3 and 4, our right and left audio, and they come to these 56K ohm resistors. I verified continuity between those pins and those specific resistors, and then I also verified continuity through those resistors to our potentiometer or our volume wheel. I then took and measured from ground to each one of those output pins of that potentiometer, and one way I'm getting 30 ohms and the other way I'm getting roughly 10K. So I suspect that it might be scratchy, but it seems like the potentiometer is good. I then verified continuity between those pins and the chip on my audio amplifier. So I know that path is good. I used a multimeter to do that. Coming out of the chip, and I also verified that we have a good ground going into the chip. Coming out of the chip, we have our audio. And we know that at a minimum, we have to be getting our right side audio, because I'm getting audio in my headphones. The suspect path, I think, is this path here, which is my left audio. And I presume that left audio is what is driving our speaker, since it's mono. And the way you get stereo into our headphone jack is then that audio is felt both ways. It's felt this way to our speaker, and it's also felt into our EMI filter. And it looks like these are just basically 3 coils. So pins 6 and 5, 4 and 3, 2 and 1 are good. I need to verify that I have, because I haven't done that yet as I'm staring at this. I need to verify that I have continuity between pin 2 and 1, and then I'm certain that I have ground, because I know when I measured on my headphone jack, or you know what, did I get ground? I'm not sure. I'm going to have to check that to make sure I have ground at pin through pins 4 to 3, and then 6 and 5. So I know I'm getting some audio. I think I'm missing the left audio, or maybe I'm getting the left audio. I'm not sure. I don't have an oscilloscope. With an oscilloscope, I could measure there. I could measure there. If I was getting an audio waveform, then I'd know. I'd know beyond the shadow of a doubt. But I don't have an oscilloscope. And then the jack. So I presume that when there is no headphones connected, you have a ground potential that's felt up in pin 5 and then back out pin 4 down to the negative wire of our headphone jack, or our speaker, as you were. I'm not getting, when I don't have the headphones plugged in, I'm not feeling a ground potential on the negative jack. So a couple of things that I'm going to do. I'm going to measure these, making sure that they're shorts across, because those are just inductors. I should have a short across. And then, if I do, then what I'm going to do is, again, try to measure continuity between the negative portion, or the negative wire on my jack, to ground. And if I don't get it, then I'm just going to short it. I'm just going to take a piece of wire and short from ground to here and see if that makes a change. If that does not make a change, then I'm going to pull my right audio coming out of this filter, and I'm basically just going to feed my right side audio directly into the positive portion of my jack. So that's what I'm going to do. That's the plan for now. But I just figured I'd kind of talk through the schematic, see if we couldn't figure something out. So anyhow, let's go back to the bench and see what we can do. All right, so from the previous clip, we kind of talked in the schematic through this this circuit board. This is pin 2, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 and 6. So pin 2 was 5 volts. Pin 3 and 4 were my left and right audio. Those are felt to these two 56k ohm resistors located here and here, and then on the other side of those two resistors they go to my potentiometer, and then coming out of these two pins of my potentiometer they then are direct shorts over to pins 1 and 3. So 1 and 3 of this chip, and then coming out of this chip it was the left and right, and the one I'm concerned with is my path for C7, because I'm missing audio on my speaker. So this is my EMI filter, and so when we check resistance on this, let's see if I can get this in here. Let's, you know what, we're gonna have to raise up the old deal here. So if I were to measure resistance between those, we have 0 ohms, and then 0 ohms, and then 0 ohms. So I know that 2 of these go to my headphone jack. 2 of these outputs, right? Or do they? I'm confusing myself now, y'all. So it said pins, I think it said 3 and 4, which I presume to be these middle pins. I don't see any indication of how you can tell which is pin 1. Is this pin 1, maybe? And in any event, if you look at here, this is C3. It's where C3 would be. I took those off so I could see better. And this is the negative side of C3. And C3 is the filtering cap on our 5-volt rail. So the negative side of that should go to ground. And if I measure from the negative side to ground, I don't get ground, and I should have ground. So that tells me then this is connected to here. Oh, come on, thing. This is connected to here, and it's also connected to this center pin. So I'm assuming then that this is in fact ground. So where does that ground come from? Because when you trace this here and up, it goes to this via, right? And when we flip that over, that's that via there, and then that goes to this pin here of my headphone jack. So the other side of that then runs, looks like out and underneath this potentiometer. I may have to take this off to see what is what, because I know that this is ground right here. This is ground. If we get our multimeter in here, if I go from there to there, that is my ground pin. So I'm wondering if that ground potential is felt up and around. So I'm going to have to take that potentiometer off and take a look under there and see. So I will be back once I have that off. I do not get it, because that comes up So does this headphone jack get the ground? Does the headphone jack get, because this is obviously a ground, does it get the ground through the EMI filter this way? But when you go to this point right here and you flip it over, that's that point here. Hold on a sec, I'm confusing myself again. So that goes through here, and then that goes to here, which is this pin right here, which goes from there up to here. And then, so then where does this freaking thing get its ground from, bro? Because that's just a loop, you know what I'm saying? There has to be another pin inside here that internally, that is, one of these pads must go to ground. But which one? I can't tell. This goes here. Bro, I'm about to take this off too. Goodness. I will disassemble this entire freaking thing to figure it out. By God, I will do it. Alright, so this pin goes to here, which makes sense. It makes sense. Alright, I gotta figure this out and then I'll explain it. Alright, so I think I figured out the kind of numbering pattern of this jack right here. So this is pin 1. Let's look at it from this way. This is pin 1, and it comes down to our EMI filter, goes through the EMI filter, and this is supposed to be ground over here, and it's not. This is pin 2. This is pin 3. And you know that they're pins 2 and 3 because if you look at the schematic and then you trace these out, these go across, like this one goes to over to C5 over here. The other one goes to it's this one right here. This one, no, as you were, this one goes to C7. So that's the lot. You know that this is pin 4 because it runs up and it goes to the negative side of my speaker jack. So then I can conclude that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And so 6 is speaker on, and it goes to this pin right here. It says speaker on. So I don't know if that, in the absence of a headphone jack, I don't know if that is supposed to be shorted between here and here. So then that tells the CPU, hey, I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure how that works. I don't know what it does, but when I put the jack in, then these two should be shorted. Pins 4 and 5 should be shorted. No, that's not right. These two have to be shorted right here in order for me to get ground potential on the negative side of my jack. Those two have to be shorted. When I put the speaker, or when I put the headphone in, then it interrupts this, or it should interrupt this right here, and then it should allow the ground potential to be felt back to the CPU. I don't know why they call it SP on. Maybe it doesn't mean speaker on. I don't know. But in any event, that's how it looks like it works. Anyhow, so, all right, I don't remember where we left off, but so yesterday we had a discussion about our jack. I took our jack apart, and I put it back together because I don't know whether this jack's good or bad, but I do know that I'm supposed to have ground on this center pin. And when you measure on, so when you check for continuity on that center pin to ground, you do not get it. You do not get continuity. So I kept trying to figure out where that ground was coming from. So when you actually flip this over and you trace that path, it comes here. Got some blurriness. Comes here and it comes to right here, right? So if we flip that over and check that, that corresponds to this point right here, that via right there. So that means that this capacitor, remember we said that this capacitor was our 5 volts and this is the negative side of that. So this capacitor is connected to the center pin, which we said the center pin of our coil, L1, was supposed to be ground. And it's not. So when you trace this, it comes here, it comes to this pad, it comes to this capacitor, and from there I couldn't figure it out. But then I had an idea. I said, okay, well, I said let's ohm from our pad to somewhere else, and I ended up ohming to right here. And if you notice, it's a short. And then if you see right above this, and it's hard to see because all the writing and stuff, but there's a via right there. And so if you probe from there to that via, you'll notice that it is in fact 0 ohms. Well, if you flip that via over, well, it just so happens that that via corresponds to this via right here, which is our ground plane. And so that tells me then that I have continuity here. I have continuity from ground to there, but I do not have continuity from that via to ground. So this whole time, that supplies the ground that goes for not only this capacitor and resistor right here, but this capacitor, the center portion of our coil, all the way back up to our our jack, but it also provides the ground for our center pin, which then is shorted to this pin, which then goes to the negative side of our speaker jack. So I think if I fix that, I'll be good to go. So all I'm going to do is run a wire, some wire through there, and then put a big blob of solder on there, and hope it makes connection. I mean, I might be able to do it just with solder, I'm not sure. Well, you know what? We can try it though, huh? We can try it. Put a big dot of solder on there and see if that works. You know what? I don't want to chance it though, because if I fill that hole with solder, I'll never get it clear. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some wire and put it through that hole and bring it out the other side. Oh, don't lose it. I got lucky and got it through there. Oh, that sucks, dude. I got so lucky the first time. So we got it through there. So let's see if we can't get some solder to stick. We got it to stick on that side. Let's oh. Let's try to get it to stick on this side. I think that is stuck on there. All right, now, if I from this pad, from this pad to ground, I should have ground, and I do, which is what it's supposed to be. So there we go. So now, I took so many components off trying to figure this out. I've got to put all these components back on, and then we'll go from there. And once I've got it all back together, we'll plug it in and give it a test. All right, I got all the components back on. So now we're going to give it a try and hope to goodness the speaker works. It does not. It does not work. Good Lord, dude. All right, let's see if the headphones still work. Headphones still work. The sound quality, at least, is a little better in the headphones. It doesn't have all that. I've only got one audio coming out of one headphone though. No, I got sound coming out of both. Okay, so I know then. So that narrows it down. I know I have sound coming out of both, just not the headphones or the speaker. And why is that? I mean, I don't know what else to do. So I don't have ground there anymore. Why don't I have ground there anymore? All right, let's take this back off. I'm never going to get speaker output if I don't get that ground to that center friggin' pin. So do I have ground here? I do. So why don't I have ground? And so obviously I have ground there. So if I have ground, I have ground here, and that ground is this pin here, but I don't have ground there, then that tells me that I have to fix that friggin' VA2. Goodness gracious, bro. How many things are broke on this? And every time I do this, I smell that fish smell. So, I mean, it's amazing how badly... I mean, this thing didn't look that corroded, you know what I'm saying? But clearly it was. All right. So now, let's break those wires off and try again. Now, do I have friggin' ground to that pin? I do. Which means I have ground to that pin. Or no, this pin. Okay. So that means the friggin' speaker is gonna work. It will work. I know I'm getting audio out of both the right side and the left side because I heard it in the headphones. I heard audio coming out of both. So the only thing that it could possibly be is that. Bam, sis. Holy cow, fellas. That stressed me out. Well, there you have it. A Game Boy or a Game Gear almost fixed. The only thing I wasn't able to fix was the screen. And there's nothing I can do about that. But I did fix. Power board was missing. Power board was missing pads after I replaced the capacitors on the power board, so I had to go back in and I had to do some soldering to get those to work properly. And once I did that, I was getting my 5 volts. But I was still having the cut on cut off issue, and so then I discovered that on T1, which is right here, this pin was shorted to that leg of T1, which is, I'm assuming that's ground, and that's an input or an output or whatever. That was shorted. That was preventing the boot. So once we cleaned that all up, then we got it to boot, then we were missing sound. And so then on the soundboard, we had to replace, or we had to fix 2 vias to ensure that the ground was making it to our headphone jack. So yeah, this was a pretty complicated repair, and hopefully they'll come out with screens one day and I will be able to completely fix this, so that somebody can have a nice Game Gear to use. But yeah, I think that's going to be the video. I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you on the next one.